of them, and Yancey had a day job, nobody was in the same city. We survived on Skype and airplanes. That was literally how we built this thing. And guess what? You can do that because it's called the internet. Oh,
Very nice.
I have one other little bit, which is our second bullet point that we're talking about. Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about competition. So we were not the first, what they call crowdfunding site to launch. There was a few before us. There was one launched about 3 years before we had. So we launched in 09. I guess they launched out math would say 06. So they were 3 years ahead of us. It was this thing called Fundable. I think they might exist, but in a very different form, owned by different people. I don't know the technicalities of it, but they didn't last all that long. There was a series of other companies. There was something called The Point. Anybody heard of The Point? Nope. Anybody heard of Groupon?
Yeah.
So The Point pivoted and became Groupon. They weren't getting traction as The Point. It was very similar. It was mechanically a little bit different. But basically, my point is that this was in the water. Like people were writing about it. People were actually doing something about it, aka us and others. And we would see these things pop up. There was another one called Crowdfunder that never launched. Yeah. Crowdfunder was from somewhere in Colorado. They had a splash page up. That was about the extent of what they had done. But it freaked me out for a moment. I was like, oh, god damn it, another one. We gotta launch. Because we hadn't launched it. We're still like developing and redesigning, and Perry and I redesigned a million times. I had this reflection once when we were digging into one of the sites that had launched. We were sort of reverse engineering some of the thinking behind the interface, some decisions that they had made, and we would do this with other sites like YouTube. Video was a really important part of Kickstarter from day one. We thought it was a way to bridge the sort of antiseptic interface of the web and make it human. You could see people's eyes, and they could ask you for what they wanted and tell you what they were going to do. So we would dissect YouTube. What makes YouTube YouTube? We should look a little bit like YouTube so they recognize it's a video, but not so much like YouTube that they think it's YouTube. Right? Yeah, it's a little psychotic, and it was. And we would do this with these competitors too. But it got to a point, and it wasn't that we got into this sort of analysis paralysis mode. Anybody familiar with analysis paralysis? Basically means you end up just looking and thinking, and you don't get anywhere. Super, super dangerous. We got to this point where we were talking about one of the competitors, would-be competitors, and I had this sort of realization. I was getting a little frustrated about looking at this stuff. I don't want to make decisions based on our assumption that what they're doing. Nobody was gaining traction. Nobody was doing anything interesting. So let's not make decisions based on somebody launched something and had a thought, right? We had a thesis we wanted to prove. It was a thesis that the three of us had evolved based on Perry's original plan. And I wanted that, and I think we all wanted that, to have a fighting chance in the world. Let's not deviate from that path. And so I think there's the one reflection on competition is, well, first of all, they weren't competition until we launched, right? We weren't in the game, so we needed to launch, and we should launch with our best foot forward based on the shoes that we wanted to put on. And I guess beyond that, it's really just about focus, right? Like, don't become overly obsessive about competition. You should look at them and recognize that they exist, but don't mimic them, because then how do you differentiate yourself, and how do you expect others to differentiate? But don't obsess. That, I think, is cancer number one.
I just want to, at this point, discussion earlier, you said, one of the interesting things about Kickstarters is we never really pivoted, and this is a term that's been used a lot. You want to share a little bit about the focus that you had on this idea? Yeah. I think the UI UX changed, but not
yeah,
sure.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so pivot. Like, we never had to pivot. Certainly not pivot like the point to Groupon. Yeah. I think this is. I'm not quite sure how to reflect on this, but like, we didn't. The Kickstarter you see today is actually very, very, very similar to the Kickstarter from literally April 28th, 2009. It looks better because I hired better designers than myself. It works better because we have a team of engineers, and there's a few more features, certainly a significant amount more features on there than there was before. But generally speaking, the project page looks generally the same, right? And I think this goes into a little bit of the thinking that went on behind the platform, and it really what it boils down to quite simply is respect. So you've got three guys who basically come from some creative discipline or another, right? And we knew that we were trying, the people that we cared about the most were the creatives, the creators, the filmmakers, the musicians, the artists, the designers, what have you. And it was about that creative control, but it was about their own creative self-expression. And one of the things I was talking about earlier is that as a designer, I actually take more inspiration from my architectural idols than from my design idols. So my architectural idols, I wanted to be an architect when I was a kid. I fucked that up, but it worked out, I guess, in some way. But I'm not an architect of real things. I'm an architect of virtual things. Thank you for that. So my idols back when I was young and still today are folks like Mies van der Rohe, Charles and Ray Eames. On the I suppose the product design side would be guys like Dieter Rams. These are folks that come out of the international style, at least Mies did, and it's about at some form minimalism. Although Charles and Ray and Dieter, I think as well, as if I know them first person, not at all, is about form following function, very much a Miesian thing. Their aesthetic was certainly a bit more effusive. Anyway, how that translates into some of the design mantras, I suppose, that we had, or that I had created for myself, was, so one, sort of playing off of the less is more thing, was less of us, more of them, right? So this is about creative self-expression. You've got a graphic designer, and they want to create their own identity, or a filmmaker, they want to create their own identity. So it should be really less of Kickstarter. We want a little bit of a watermark or a moniker in there to recognize like where you are, and we wanted to build trust with the community and so forth. But we really wanted it to be a little bit more of a backseat. I was saying this sort of reflection earlier, which we've not quite gotten to. I don't know if we'll ever get to, but I had this ambition that the logo, you guys know it's like dark gray and green, right? Which I think we kind of made on a whim. Like I just picked, it's a free typeface, right? It's called Baruda. Kind of looks like the Dunkin' Donuts logo, which pisses me off to no end when people tell me that. But whatever. I just needed to launch a website. So I wanted that logo to basically go grayscale. I wanted us to get to a point where it was really less of us and more of them, right? We had done a redesign at one point, and really the whole intention, I'd gone on this whole rant earlier in another discussion about things that are important to designers, like typography and kerning and grids and stuff like that, which kind of meaningful, but a little academic. So we had gone through this point where we were going to put the whole site on a grid because it wasn't. It was kind of sloppy. My whole push was, okay, if we're going to go and do a tweak to the page, let's do it in a way that actually has meaning. And let's make that project image a little bit bigger if we can. Even if it's just like a couple pixels bigger, it means something, right? Let's make that video bigger. And so like that's a bit of what I mean by this less of us, more of them. And even things like, I would argue, and this could be debated, but like we don't allow you to pick a typeface or change the color of the project page. And you could argue, well, we're forcing our some form of our identity because we're picking a typeface and saying it's going to be a white background on the creator. But really, what that was also about was focus for them. They should focus on writing, and they should focus on producing their video if they're going to do a video, and focus on the rewards, not focus on silly things like change the background or pick a typeface. Because quite honestly, MySpace proved to us that that's a bad decision. So you know, it was really about creating this format, and we, trust me, we'd gone down the road of like, oh, should we let them pick a certain set of typefaces, but it just seemed off on a tangent. I've completely lost my train of thought.
That's okay.
Can we ask one question?
Yeah, okay, I was just about to move into a Q&A session because I think that's probably one thing that everyone's interested in. So if I could request that you could identify yourself and then, you know, the question itself. Do we have floating mics around, or okay? Why don't you go ahead?
Yeah. Okay, I hear your story. It's very inspiring.
You're from?
I'm Vikram. I have a consulting firm in Singapore.
Yeah.
So it's my own firm. And the only thing I see is basically
that's community right there.
When you're starting some side project or trying to build a company, besides doing your other jobs consulting because you want this project to be funded. How did you do with your work? Because you need to fund this project because initially you don't have any investors coming, you 3 guys coming there, sitting there.
Yeah.
So how long was that period? How long it took you to really come to that funding stages where you know that, hey, okay, I should launch it, I have enough money to launch it, and I don't need to do any side work. And how did you support your, actually, this Kickstarter project?
Yeah, so we supported it in part by not paying ourselves. So I went like 3 years without a pay. Without a salary, like no money. I kept a couple clients on the side to enable me to eke out some living. But it was also, I think it was more than money. It was like, hey, most startups you never hear about, right? Most startups, if you do hear about them, most of them go away, right? So this was more about, hey, if Kickstarter exists for a blip or never actually launches, I at least have something to fall back on. One client, I can go back to building up that practice again. Thank God I didn't have to do that. And then it was about time management, which I will admit I'm usually really not good at. I'm a workaholic, so I just throw myself into it. But I also knew I needed to like have deadlines for my clients, for me. So I think it's okay to talk about this. I would work on that stuff from 2 to 4 in the morning. So it was like 2 to 4 in the morning, and like that's when I would work on client stuff when I was like, right? And then I would actually, what I ended up doing as well, like later on as time went on, as I was shifting more energy into Kickstarter because we just needed to, I ended up bringing on friends to do most of the actual design work, and I was just working with the client.
So you're paying your friends through your earning through the client?
Yeah, and I would just take a little bit off the top, like a management fee.
So
yeah.
That's how you funded your project. And how about your co-founders?
Not entirely. So we had like friends and family investment, right. So like seed or angel, not quite. And then it was only later that we got institutional money. But you know, I think first of all, at least for us, all the money went to the engineers. Right. None of us were technical enough to build it. I'm not technical enough to build that thing. Yeah, I think there are these words, and we were joking about this before. I really hate like pop culture words, like SEO and growth hacking. Like it makes me kind of nauseous because we just leave it at the surface, right? But I think it was about resourcefulness and resilience, and there was a lot of moments in that. So it was 2 years from when I came on to when we launched. I mean, think about that. It was another year and a half or so from when Yancey came on, and Perry had been working on this since 2001. So Perry was obviously like doing other stuff to make a living, but you know, we're all fairly, and Perry I think is far more so. We're all pretty minimalist. I have 2 pairs of jeans and another pair of pants. Like I don't need much. It's part of an ecological thing, but. Yeah, I think just being, like, the thing was the company, and the thing was the mission for why we were doing it. That's what got me up every day. That's what kept me from going to bed at night. That's what got us through arguments and tough times, was we just needed this thing to happen. And that moment that I was on the phone with Perry, there was this, you can call it ego, we all have one. There was this moment where like, this is the thing. Like, this is my fucking thing. I'm the one to do this because I've been tinkering with this other stuff for so many years, and I care about this stuff so bad, and this idea is awesome. And my wife thought I was nuts. My dog probably thought I was nuts. But Yeah, I just threw myself into it. So.
Yeah. Before I ask the next question, I just want to make sure that the people at the back, can you hear us?
And do you have
You're
questions?
Okay,
Oh,
so
you
you
want
gotta
louder.
maybe hold the mic a little closer,
I
right?
told you it's like punk rock. over
Yeah, I
there.
guess so. Okay, why don't I take the question way at the back there? Yeah.
Thanks. Hi, Charles. My name is Ariando. I'm a student.
Yeah.
I love what you're doing with the B Corp thing. Like, I love how Kickstarter. Like, I love how Kickstarter is going for this B Corp thing. I want to know more about it. I want to know, like, were you a big driver behind it? You know, did all of you share this vision? And I want to know, like, any challenges you faced. Like, how do you convince your investors that, like, this is okay? You know, was it just because you retained majority shareholding? And I don't know. Maybe if you have any ideas about how you spread this idea around the world. I mean, I haven't heard about it in Singapore. You know, it's 0.1% of the US, as you say. So, yeah, tell us more, please.
Anybody familiar with Benefit Corporation? Few people. Yeah. So it's fairly new. I'll speak. Sorry. It's fairly new. It's been going on for a few years. In the United States, it's like state by state, and that's ultimately why we did it when we did it. So we're incorporated in Delaware. Delaware, I think about 18 months ago. I should actually state I left the company 2 years ago. So some of the technicalities around this I don't know. But it's something we've been working on and talking about for a long time. And the bigger point is if we could have done it when we launched, we would have done it. We would have always been a B Corp. There would be no news about us becoming a B Corp because we always would have been one. And I think maybe why you're asking the question and the reflection of me being a big driver behind it, we were all big drivers behind it. And it was something that was really important to the three of us. And ultimately what it comes down to is what we were building was more than just the money that we were earning. It was about having a social impact in the world in a positive way, and being able to enforce with the board or with our investors, with the company, with ourselves, kind of hold our feet to the fire over the long haul about some of those mission-driven desires. Right, so trying to think of a good example. If you go public, not that we're going public. We've made public announcement that we're not going to sell. But if we're to go public, suddenly control over decisions of the organization get lost a bit, right? It's about